Hello again everyone. Today we're going to go over installing a EVO 9 turbo on a Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 8. As always, perform anything you see at this video at your own risk. This is simply meant to show how I installed my turbo. If you're not confident in your own abilities, please do not try this at home. Alright, the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure all your gasket surfaces are clean and flat. So here we're putting on our O2 housing gasket, and this is an aftermarket O2 housing that we're bolting on to our EVO 9 turbo. And we're going to bolt it in place here. Again, this is an aftermarket housing. The stock housing does not look that shiny. So we're going to speed this up here so you can see we're tightening everything down. Also, to note that you do want the cooling lines. There are two coolant lines. Bolt those on the turbo before you set the turbo down like we're doing here. They're going to be very hard to get at if you don't put them on first. So put those coolant lines on the turbo before you set the turbo down in the car like I am now. I'm just setting it down so I can get access to it easier after I put the manifold on. As you can see now, we're putting the exhaust manifold gasket on that goes to the head. Our head has already been cleaned and buffed and ready to go. Same with exhaust manifold. The exhaust manifold, as you can see, there's been buffed off and made sure it was straight. And next we're going to slide the exhaust manifold onto the head, and then we're going to throw a couple bolts on to hold it in place. And once it's held in place here, we're gonna pick up the turbo. We had it set down below, so now we can pick it up, and it's gonna have two studs, so we can put the two studs through the exhaust manifold, and then the other two bolts we can put on too, so we can lift it up here. Also, don't forget the gasket. There is a gasket that goes between the exhaust manifold and the turbo, which I couldn't really show putting it in because of the camera angle. It's kind of hard to see. After that, we can tighten up all the manifold bolts that go from the exhaust manifold to the head. So we're gonna get those tightened up here. And next we're actually going to show installing the O2 sensor. You're going to leave that unplugged so you can twist it around so it doesn't get twisted up. Actually, twist that in place and then tighten it up with a wrench. Obviously I couldn't show that very well on camera, but you got to tighten it up. And next we're going to show the coolant lines here. As you can see, they're disconnected, and we gotta reconnect those. Like I said, you want to make sure you have those coolant hoses bolted onto the turbo before you bolt the turbo in place. Otherwise it's going to be very hard to get to them. And here you can see a top view of what those hoses look like. Clamps aren't on it yet. Obviously you gotta put the clamp back on it. And here you can see where the oil feed line is going to go from the head to the turbo, and we believe we're going to install that next. And again, if you didn't see any of my other tutorials or write-ups, when bolting an EVO 9 turbo onto an EVO 8, you got to get a different. You got to get the EVO 9 J pipe and the EVO 9 oil feed lines and coolant lines. So you basically want to get everything from EVO 9 turbo. The EVO 8's turbo stuff is different, even from an 05 to an 06. So you want to make sure you have the EVO 9 lines. And this is just sped up to show I'm bolting on the oil feed line to the turbo. Just getting it in place and getting the bolt started, and then we're going to get the bolt started that feeds the oil from the head. Once they've both been started, we can tighten them up. after this, we're going to go down below and we're going to install the return line that goes from the turbo to the oil pan. First thing you want to do is bolt up the return line to the turbo. There'll be a bolt on each side. Again, this is hard to show on camera, but I did bolt it in place here. And then after that, after you get it just in place, you don't want to tighten up the top bolts, just get them so you know they're good and started. And then you can start the bolts, the two bolts on the bottom that hold the oil return line to the oil pan, and get those started. And once all four are started, you can tighten them up. Also, you probably want to get new gaskets. Also, you want to have new gaskets available for the return line. Next, you're going to want to install the J-pipe back onto the turbo. Again, this is easier from below. You want to get the car up in the air, and there's also going to be a gasket between the J-pipe and the turbo. Usually you can just reuse your stock gasket. Once your J-pipe's back in place, you're going to want to put your lower intercooler pipe back on. And then if you watched my removal video, I had to remove the crossbars, the cross braces below to get the exhaust down low enough. So here I'm reinstalling those lower cross braces. And yes, I always work that fast. I'm very fast. Next, we're going to want to lower it down and add some oil. Since I drained all my oil, it's a good time to do an oil change if you're swapping a turbo. So I drained all my oil, obviously, when I removed the old turbo. Before I removed my old turbo, actually. So now we're going to add the oil. 4.5 quarts. After this, we're going to plug in our oxygen sensor. Then we're going to put the heat shield back on over the exhaust manifold, bolt that back in place. And then we also have to add our coolant because I drained the radiator halfway. I am adding 50-50, it's not 100%. Next, we're going to put our intake back on. Put our intake back in place, connect all the vacuum hoses that we disconnected. And after that, we're going to put the spark plug cover back in place and bolt that down. And you might think we're ready to go after this to just start it up, but what we're going to want to do here is prime the turbo. So we're going to unplug the crank position sensor here right behind the oil cap. We'll unplug that and then we'll go crank the car over, and this way it'll crank over and not start. And that'll prime the turbo, and that way you get oil in the turbo before you start it up. And then after that, you're going to want to check things over. After you prime it, you will check and make sure there's no oil leaking. Make sure you tighten up everything. Make sure there's no coolant leaking. Check everything over, and then you should be good to start it up. And check everything again after you start it up. Take it for a test drive and check it again. You always want to make sure you're not going to be leaking any oil anywhere, since you were working with oil lines, and same with coolant. You don't want to be leaking any coolant anywhere. So after you take it for a test drive, check it over, make sure everything is good to go.